Hi everyone. In this video, I'll demonstrate a feature in RStudio called Visual R Markdown. Now, note that I'm making this video in February of 2021, and the version of RStudio with Visual R Markdown that is, only recently came out, so there's potentially more that we don't know yet about this feature. But what I'm going to do is demonstrate a few key aspects of this feature that might be useful to you. So here we are in RStudio, and the first thing I'll do is I'm just going to adjust it with the console on the right, which is my preference. And then the first thing I'd like to show you is that you can go to the Help menu here, and you can click on About RStudio. And here you can see what version of RStudio you have already on your computer, if at all. And if you have version 1.4, some type of 1.4 version, then you should already have the Visual R Markdown feature that we're going to look at today. But if you have a version previous to 1.4, then you might need to update your RStudio in order to have Visual R Markdown available to you. So that's how you check your version, and then of course you can also click here, Check for Updates, if you would like. And in this case, I'm using the newest version, but it may also tell you that there's another version available, in which case you can download that new version and it should overwrite whatever existing version you have already. Okay, so what I'll do now is I'll make a new R Markdown file. New file, R Markdown, here we go. And I have entered some information here, and I'll just click OK. And now I get a new R Markdown file, as I might always get. One thing I'll note is that you can click here to toggle a table of contents. So that can be useful sometimes. And I'll delete everything below line 12, because we don't need any of that. And then I'll go ahead and I'll save this file on my computer. So I'll click on Save right here, and I'll save it in a folder of my choosing. So now I've saved my file, and what I'll do is I will switch over to Visual R Markdown mode by clicking here on this icon in the top right corner of the file viewer. So I'll click right there. Now, if it's your first time doing this, you might get some kind of pop-up window warning you that you're about to switch modes. And so you can go ahead and click that that's fine, and then you'll see a view like this. Now, one thing you may have noticed is that our file has become unsaved. It's become red up here. And so one thing that I've noticed in using this so far is that the RStudio will make changes to your file of some kind as you switch between Visual R Markdown mode and the traditional view. So that's something to keep in mind, that occasionally it may happen that it'll change some of your formatting or how you've written something or some of your syntax outside of the R code chunks. Anyway, so at the top we see our usual YAML header, which looks to be exactly the same as it is in the traditional view. And then we see our first code chunk, which is here, the one that's always there and that we should leave alone. You'll notice on the left that there are no line numbers here. So now I can get started making a document if I want. So I can click here and I can designate a heading 1, for example. I can call this my introduction. Hit enter. Now I've gone back to normal text right there. So this is very much like a word processor, like Microsoft Word, a primitive version of Microsoft Word, albeit. So now I can type some text here in the introduction section. So you can see there that I've typed some introductory text, and I'll go ahead and save my work. Then I can go down, and if I want, I can insert a code chunk the way I could any other way. And then here I can type whatever code I would like. So now I've inserted some code, and I can run this code chunk the way you always could in a traditional view of an R Markdown file, and you get the result right here, again with the options to collapse it or close it. And then of course, if I wanted to I could create a new section, so I can say heading 1 again, and say maybe my next section is methods. And then I can type, more things like this. So another benefit is that in this case, you can just highlight some text. You can choose rich formatting like bold, italics, underline, however you might in any word processor. You can easily insert a link by clicking here and insert the URL somewhat the way you might do in Microsoft Word or another word processor. It can also help you insert an image through this window. Furthermore, you also have the ability now to insert a table. So I'll go down here, for instance, and say insert a table. You can specify some characteristics of that table, and then we can fill that table in right here. Now, of course, another thing I could do, and I'll save my work, another thing I could do is I could insert a heading number 2 in which I could write something else. So I'll just write heading 2 example here. And then note that we can go back up here. You saw this earlier in the video. We can click here and once again see the table of contents. So as you build your file, you can see the way it'll look approximately when it's actually rendered in the end as some kind of HTML Word or PDF file, for example. And then you can see the contents. You can also click on these various contents to jump to various parts of the document conveniently. Note that you can also insert numbered lists or bullet lists pretty easily from this menu as well. So I'll save my work, and now what I'll do is I'll click on this button again. This is the toggle that moves between the traditional view of R Markdown and the visual view. And so here you can see that it has inserted the single pound sign for a heading number 1. For my heading number 2, I got the double. It formatted that table I made the way you traditionally would in an R Markdown file. I will switch back now to the new Visual R Markdown view so you see it once more, and then of course I'll remind you that you'll still export your file. You'll knit your file to either HTML, PDF, Word, or something else that you might install the same way you always would. So I think this is an interesting new feature to check out that may be extremely useful in certain circumstances, and I encourage you to experiment with it and see how it can be useful to you.